Michael Jordan learns his childhood court is being demolished, then halts the bulldozers. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan was born in 1963 in Brooklyn, New York, but it wasn't long before his family moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. His journey to basketball greatness began in that small town, where the future NBA legend would learn some of the most valuable lessons of his life, not just on the court, but off it as well. From a young age, Jordan showed an intense passion for sports, particularly basketball. As a child, he would often play with his older brothers, Larry and James, who were both better than him. This sibling rivalry would become one of the driving forces that pushed Jordan to strive for excellence. His father, James Jordan Sr., a hardworking and supportive figure in Michael's life, provided the foundation of discipline and resilience that would shape his future. In the early years, Jordan's talent was far from obvious. He was a late bloomer, standing just 5 feet 11 inches by the time he reached high school. He wasn't the standout player at Laney High School. In fact, during his sophomore year, Jordan didn't even make the varsity team. That moment became one of the most pivotal in his entire career. Instead of quitting, Michael took the setback as fuel for the fire. He didn't sulk or give up on the sport he loved. He put in the hours, practicing late into the night on his driveway court, working on his shooting, his dribbling, his game. Every missed shot, every lost game, became a building block for the fierce competitor that would emerge. By the time he returned to the court for his junior year, Jordan had transformed into a player who would soon be impossible to ignore. He made the varsity team and began his rise toward greatness. Jordan's transformation didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't without sacrifice. While his high school peers were hanging out after school or attending parties, Jordan was perfecting his jump shot. His dedication paid off during his junior and senior years when he became the star of the Laney High School basketball team. But what really separated him from the rest wasn't just his physical gifts, it was his relentless desire to win. Even in those early years, Jordan had a fire that could not be extinguished. His mentality wasn't just about getting better than the guy next to him, it was about being the absolute best, and anything less than that was unacceptable. By the time Jordan reached college, he had become a household name. After an impressive senior season, Jordan chose to attend the University of North Carolina, joining one of the most prestigious basketball programs in the country under Coach Dean Smith. It wasn't long before Jordan made his mark. As a freshman, he played a crucial role in helping the Tar Heels win the 1982 NCAA championship against the Georgetown Hoyas. Jordan's game-winning shot in the final moments of the championship game against Georgetown solidified his status as a rising star. That shot marked the beginning of Jordan's legacy, but it was only a small glimpse of what was to come. His time at UNC was not just about the trophies, but the lessons he would learn about leadership, teamwork, and perseverance. Under the mentorship of Coach Smith, Jordan's basketball IQ skyrocketed, and his competitive nature became even more evident. The pressure on Jordan to succeed was immense. While many of his peers were simply trying to make a name for themselves, Jordan was being groomed for NBA greatness. His coaches, teammates, and the media all saw his potential, and the expectations began to mount. But instead of crumbling under the weight of these expectations, Jordan thrived. His work ethic became legendary, and it wasn't just about scoring points, it was about everything else: playing defense, setting screens, helping his teammates. He understood that to be the best, he needed to do it all. Even at UNC, Jordan's intensity on and off the court was palpable. He pushed himself harder than anyone, and that drive earned him national recognition. His performance at UNC set the stage for what was to come. In 1984, Jordan declared for the NBA draft, and he was selected by the Chicago Bulls as the 3rd overall pick. The expectations surrounding him were massive. Jordan had proven himself in college, but the NBA was an entirely different animal. No longer could he rely on the structure and system of college basketball. In the pros, he would be facing grown men, players who had years of experience, and teams that had been built for the sole purpose of winning championships. But Jordan wasn't intimidated. He was determined to prove that he belonged, that he could not only compete but dominate. Jordan's rookie year with the Chicago Bulls was a revelation. He immediately became the focal point of the offense and quickly made an impact, leading the Bulls to a much improved record. His scoring ability, athleticism, and work ethic were unmatched, and it wasn't long before he became one of the most talked about players in the league. But Jordan wasn't just scoring points, he was taking over games. His competitive fire was evident in every play, every possession. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to destroy his opponent. His intensity on the court was legendary, and even in his early years, it was clear that he wasn't just a talented player, he was someone who could change the course of a game in an instant. By his second season, Jordan's dominance was undeniable. His scoring averages were through the roof, and he had established himself as one of the premier players in the league. But despite his individual success, Jordan was still searching for something more. He knew that individual accolades were only part of the equation. True greatness would come when he could lead his team to the ultimate prize, an NBA championship. It wasn't enough to be the best player. Jordan's mindset was always focused on winning, and winning championships was the only thing that mattered. As the years went by, Jordan's hunger for victory only grew stronger. He didn't just want to be the best in the league, he wanted to be the greatest of all time. His desire to win was relentless, and with each passing season, he worked harder, pushed himself further, and became more determined to achieve the one thing that had eluded him in his early years, a championship. The journey would not be easy. He would face fierce competitors, both on the court and within his own team. But Jordan's confidence never wavered. He knew that with hard work, determination, and a little bit of luck, he could reach the top. The 1989-90 season was pivotal for Jordan and the Bulls. Despite the team's success, they continued to fall short in the playoffs, unable to break through the physical play of the Detroit Pistons. For years, the Pistons had been a thorn in Jordan's side. They were a team built to stop him, using their rough style of play to frustrate and wear down the Chicago Star. Jordan knew that to win, he had to evolve. He had to get stronger, tougher, and smarter. It was a challenge that Jordan was more than willing to accept. The 1990s would become the decade where Jordan would truly cement his legacy, but the road to greatness would be filled with trials, triumphs, and moments of personal growth that would define his career and the Chicago Bulls dynasty. Jordan's early years were about proving himself, not just as a player but as someone who could lead a team to greatness. As he matured both on and off the court, he transformed into one of the most driven athletes the world has ever seen. His story had only just begun, and the legacy that would eventually be forged was built on a foundation of hard work, resilience, and an unwavering desire to be the best. Michael Jordan's rise to superstardom was inevitable. His innate talent, combined with his relentless drive, positioned him to become a transformative figure in basketball. After making a name for himself at the University of North Carolina, where his game-winning shot in the 1982 NCAA Finals became a defining moment of his early career, Jordan entered the NBA with sky-high expectations. Yet, as talented as he was, his first few years in the league would test him in ways that went far beyond what anyone could have predicted. Jordan's rookie season with the Chicago Bulls was nothing short of electrifying. It was clear from the start that the league had never seen a player quite like him. He averaged 28.2 points per game, immediately establishing himself as one of the most exciting and dominant forces in basketball. His ability to score from anywhere on the court, whether it was with his devastating mid-range game or his explosive dunks, made him a nightmare for defenders. But while Jordan's individual accomplishments were spectacular, his team was far from championship material. Despite his scoring prowess, the Bulls struggled to find consistency, and by the time the 1985-86 season came around, the team was still in disarray. Jordan, however, was continuing to rise above it all. In just his second season, he managed to score a career-high 63 points in a playoff game against the Boston Celtics, one of the greatest performances in NBA history. Despite his personal brilliance, Jordan couldn't lead the Bulls to the promised land just yet. His scoring and athleticism were unmatched, but the team lacked the necessary depth and experience to compete for a title. Jordan knew that in order to become the champion he aspired to be, he would need to do more than just score. He would need to elevate those around him and prove that he could lead a team in a way that transcended individual brilliance. His growing frustration with the lack of success for the Bulls pushed him to take a step back and reflect on how he could evolve as both a player and a leader. As the 1988-89 season began, Jordan was at the peak of his powers. He had transformed into a more complete player, with an improved understanding of the game and a heightened basketball IQ. His leadership skills began to emerge more clearly as he demanded more from his teammates. The Bulls were a talented but young squad, and Jordan's intensity and expectation for excellence would be the catalyst for their growth. By now, the basketball world had fully recognized his greatness. Jordan wasn't just an incredible individual player, he was the future of the NBA. The 1989 playoffs were a turning point for Jordan and the Bulls. For the first time, Jordan truly looked like the leader of a championship-caliber team. In the first round, the Bulls faced the Cleveland Cavaliers, a talented team led by Mark Price and Brad Daugherty. The series was an intense, hard-fought battle, but it was Jordan's iconic shot over Craig Ello in the closing seconds of Game 5 that propelled the Bulls to victory. The shot, which would later be known as the shot, was the moment that showed everyone Jordan wasn't just a player who could score at will, he was a player who could deliver when it mattered most. The basketball world stood in awe as Jordan's rise to superstardom continued, and the Bulls were finally becoming a true contender. However, despite his individual brilliance, the Bulls still fell short of the ultimate goal. In the Eastern Conference Finals, they faced the Detroit Pistons, the defending champions, and a team built on toughness, physicality, and aggressive defense. The Pistons, led by the Bad Boys and Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman, had made a name for themselves as the most physical team in the league. The Bulls, in contrast, were still trying to figure out how to deal with the grind of playoff basketball at the highest level. The Pistons, with their hard-nosed, no-nonsense style of play, made it clear that Jordan's individual brilliance alone wouldn't be enough to get the Bulls over the hump. The 1989 series against the Pistons was a wake-up call for Jordan and the Bulls. Despite Jordan's amazing performances, including a 40-point game in the deciding Game 4, the Pistons swept the Bulls, handing them their second consecutive playoff defeat. But this loss would prove to be pivotal. Jordan's realization that the Bulls needed to be stronger, more physical, and more resilient led him to work even harder that offseason. He knew that if he wanted to beat the Pistons and win a championship, he needed to become tougher, not just physically, but mentally as well. The 1990-91 season would be a year of transformation for Jordan and the Bulls. During the offseason, Jordan worked tirelessly to improve his strength and conditioning. He spent countless hours in the gym, focusing on building the muscle and endurance that would allow him to withstand the physical punishment the Pistons had inflicted on him. He also became more determined to help his teammates become better. Jordan understood that he couldn't do it alone. While his individual talent could carry the team to a certain point, a championship required a cohesive unit working together. As the 1991 season began, it was clear that the Bulls were a much more complete team. Jordan's leadership had elevated his teammates, and the addition of veterans like Horace Grant and John Paxson provided the Bulls with the necessary balance and experience to compete at the highest level. The team's defense had improved dramatically, and Jordan had become a more effective passer and playmaker. He was no longer just the go-to scorer, he was also the facilitator who could get his teammates involved and make them better. The Bulls were now a well-rounded team that was poised to take on the best. In the Eastern Conference Finals that year, the Bulls met the Pistons once again, and this time, things were different. The Bulls had grown stronger and smarter, and Jordan was playing the best basketball of his career. In Game 4 of the series, Jordan dominated both ends of the court, leading the Bulls to a 4-0 sweep of the Pistons. It was a satisfying victory for Jordan, not only because the Bulls had finally broken through but also because it marked his transformation from a player who had been stopped by the Pistons' physicality to one who had overcome it. The 1991 NBA Finals would be a showdown between the Chicago Bulls and the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. The Lakers were the defending champions, and they presented another massive challenge for Jordan and the Bulls. However, Jordan's focus, determination, and complete game were too much for the Lakers. He dominated the series, averaging 31.2 points per game, and led the Bulls to a 4-1 victory, earning his first NBA championship and Finals MVP. It was the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and growth, and it was the moment that confirmed what everyone had known for years: Michael Jordan was the best player in the world. The championship was not just a personal achievement for Jordan, it was a victory for the entire Bulls organization. The team had finally reached the pinnacle of success, and Jordan had proven that he was not only a scoring machine but a leader capable of taking a team to the highest level. But even as he celebrated this victory, Jordan knew that this was only the beginning. His hunger for more was insatiable, and he was already focused on how to defend the title and continue his ascent to basketball immortality. The Bulls dynasty had just begun, and Michael Jordan was ready to lead them to even greater heights. The 1991-92 season marked a turning point in Michael Jordan's career. After winning his first championship the previous year, Jordan had proven to the world that he was not just a player who could dominate in the regular season, but also in the most crucial moments of the playoffs. But Jordan's hunger for greatness was insatiable. Winning one championship was not enough, he wanted more. He wanted to build a legacy that would define basketball for generations to come, and the 1992 season was the first step toward that goal. The Chicago Bulls entered the season with newfound confidence, but also with the knowledge that they were not invincible. They had dethroned the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals, but the competition was fierce. The Bulls had emerged as the team to beat, but they knew that their success would depend on maintaining their edge. Jordan's leadership was key. His intensity and determination had become the foundation of the team's success, and now he was pushing his teammates to greater heights. Jordan wasn't just looking to prove himself anymore, he was looking to prove that the Chicago Bulls could become a dynasty. The 1991-92 Bulls were a complete team. They had depth, experience, and the kind of leadership that Jordan provided. Scottie Pippen, who had emerged as one of the league's top all-around players, was an integral part of the team's success. The addition of veteran players like Horace Grant, Bill Cartwright, and John Paxson provided the Bulls with the right mix of youth and experience. But it was Jordan, with his ability to take over a game at any moment, who remained the centerpiece of the team. His growth as a leader was apparent. He had become not only the best player on the floor but also the one who could inspire and push his teammates to perform at their highest level. The 1992 season was also about the evolution of Jordan's game. He wasn't just a scorer anymore, he was a complete player. His passing, defense, and basketball IQ had all improved, making him a more well-rounded player than ever before. Jordan had always been a dominant scorer, but now he was showing that he could impact the game in multiple ways. His ability to distribute the ball to open teammates, to play tough defense, and to control the pace of the game was changing the way basketball was played. The NBA had always been about individual brilliance, but Jordan was proving that a team could dominate if all the pieces were working together. As the season progressed, it became clear that the Bulls were a team built for greatness. Their offense was flowing, their defense was stifling, and they had the best player in the world leading the charge. Jordan was averaging over 30 points per game, but it wasn't just his scoring that was making a difference. He was playing smarter, not just harder. He had learned to trust his teammates, to pass when necessary, and to play a more complete game. Jordan was proving that, even though he was the best player in the league, he could also elevate those around him. The Eastern Conference Finals that season saw the Bulls facing off against the New York Knicks. The Knicks, led by their hard-nosed coach Pat Riley and players like Patrick Ewing, were a formidable opponent. The series was intense and physical, but Jordan's brilliance shone through. He was unstoppable, averaging over 30 points per game in the series and leading the Bulls to a 4-0 sweep. It was a statement victory, showing that the Bulls were ready to defend their title and that Jordan was more focused than ever on repeating as champions. In the NBA Finals, the Bulls would face off against the Portland Trail Blazers, led by Clyde Drexler. The Blazers had a talented team, but they were no match for the Bulls, who were firing on all cylinders. Jordan, who had been dominating throughout the playoffs, took his game to another level in the finals. In Game 1, he scored 35 points in the first half, showing just how far ahead of the competition he was. But it wasn't just about the points. Jordan's leadership was evident. He was setting up his teammates, playing defense, and controlling the game in ways that no one else could. Game 1 of the finals also featured one of Jordan's most iconic moments, the flu game, a performance that would go down in NBA lore. Jordan, visibly ill and struggling with fatigue, still managed to put up 38 points and lead the Bulls to a victory. His determination and willpower were on full display, showing that nothing could stop him when he was on a mission. Jordan's ability to perform under pressure, no matter the circumstances, was a hallmark of his career, and this game was a perfect example of his resolve. The series would end with the Bulls winning 4-2, securing their second consecutive championship. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the second year in a row, solidifying his status as the best player in the world. But as much as the title was important to Jordan, it was more than just the trophy that mattered. It was the confirmation that the Bulls were not a one-hit wonder. They had now established themselves as a dynasty, and Jordan's place in NBA history was all but guaranteed. As the 1992-93 season began, the Bulls found themselves in the enviable position of defending their championship. They were no longer just a team to beat, they were the team that had been through the fire and come out on top. The pressure on Jordan was higher than ever, but he thrived in it. Jordan's work ethic and leadership were at their peak, and the Bulls were poised to make another deep run in the playoffs. The team's chemistry was stronger than ever, and Jordan was leading the way. But as the season went on, there were signs that things weren't all perfect. Jordan's personal life was beginning to take a toll on him. The pressure of being the best, of carrying the hopes of an entire city, was wearing him down. And then, in the summer of 1993, tragedy struck. Jordan's father, James Jordan Sr., was tragically murdered during a robbery. The loss of his father had a profound impact on Michael. It was a moment that changed his life and altered the course of his career. The grief was overwhelming, and it forced Jordan to reevaluate his place in the game. He had already achieved so much, but his heart was no longer in basketball. After much reflection, Jordan made the decision to retire from basketball at the age of 30, leaving the game at the height of his career. It was a shocking move that stunned the basketball world, but it was one that made sense to those who understood the immense weight of loss that Jordan had experienced. His retirement would mark the end of an era for the Chicago Bulls, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Jordan's impact on the game of basketball was undeniable. His performances in the 1990s, his championships, his MVPs, all of these achievements were a testament to his greatness. But more than that, it was his leadership, his mentality, and his resilience that would make him a legend. His ability to come back from adversity, to overcome personal loss, and to push himself to be the best, even when faced with the toughest challenges, was what made him the greatest of all time. And as Jordan stepped away from the game in 1993, there was no doubt that his legacy would live on forever. Michael Jordan's retirement in 1993 stunned the basketball world. At the peak of his career, with 3 consecutive NBA championships under his belt, 5 MVP awards, and a legacy solidifying with every game, he walked away from the game of basketball. For the fans, the loss of Jordan felt like losing a part of the NBA itself. But for Jordan, the decision to retire wasn't just about basketball, it was deeply personal. The death of his father, James Jordan Sr., had shaken him to the core. The murder of his father in the summer of 1993, during a robbery while his father was on a road trip, was a traumatic event that left Jordan reeling. His father had been his biggest supporter and closest confidant. The loss was immense, and for the first time in his life, Jordan felt the weight of something far more significant than basketball. The grief was overwhelming. With his father gone, basketball seemed less important, and the pressure to perform in front of millions of people no longer provided the same sense of fulfillment. The fire inside him was still there, but it had shifted. Jordan took a step back from the game that had made him a global icon and began searching for something else. In the spring of 1994, Jordan shocked the world when he announced that he was retiring from basketball. But it wasn't just about walking away from the game. Jordan was stepping into a new chapter of his life. His decision to retire marked the end of the first, most iconic phase of his career, but it also opened the door to something unexpected. Jordan chose to pursue baseball, a sport that had always been close to his heart, partly due to his father's influence. His first love wasn't basketball, it was baseball, and he decided to honor his father's memory by playing the game. He signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox and spent the 1994 season playing for the Birmingham Barons, a Double-A affiliate of the White Sox. Jordan's transition to baseball was far from smooth. His first year in the minors was filled with challenges. He wasn't the natural baseball player he had been on the basketball court, and while his athleticism was undeniable, the mechanics of baseball were a different game entirely. He struggled with his batting, and his .202 average was far from impressive. However, Jordan's determination to succeed never wavered. He approached baseball with the same relentless work ethic that had made him a basketball legend. He spent hours in the batting cages, working on his swing, trying to improve. Despite his struggles, there was a sense of pride in the effort Jordan put into his baseball career. His work ethic didn't just apply to basketball, it was a part of his DNA. He was determined to give baseball everything he had, even though he wasn't dominating the way he had on the basketball court. While Jordan's baseball journey didn't yield the same immediate success as his basketball career, it was a crucial part of his evolution. It gave him a break from the intense spotlight of the NBA, allowing him to rediscover himself and find peace in his personal life. But, as the 1994 season wore on, something began to change. The fire for basketball that had burned inside him for years started to flicker again. Jordan missed the competition, the adrenaline of the NBA, the challenge of being the best in the world. Baseball had given him time to process his grief and recalibrate, but it was clear that basketball was where his heart lay. In March 1995, after a brief but intense reflection, Jordan announced that he was returning to the NBA. His press release, simply saying "I'm back," became one of the most iconic moments in sports history. The world was stunned. For a time, it seemed as though the greatest basketball player of all time had walked away for good. But Jordan's return was not just about his personal love for the game, it was about proving something to himself and the world. He had conquered basketball, and now it was time to reclaim his place at the top. The Chicago Bulls, who had won 55 games and made it to the Eastern Conference semifinals in Jordan's absence, were ready for his return. However, things had changed in the NBA. While the Bulls were still a strong team, the landscape of the league had shifted. Teams like the Houston Rockets had grown stronger, and the New York Knicks were pushing for their own championship runs. The Eastern Conference, in particular, had become a battleground. And with Jordan returning from a year-and-a-half-long hiatus, it was clear that he would have to adapt to a new, more competitive era of basketball. Jordan's first game back with the Bulls was a mix of emotions. His comeback wasn't perfect. The rust was visible in his play, and he wasn't quite in the same rhythm he had been in when he left. But even in those early games, it was clear that his basketball instincts hadn't left him. Jordan's impact on the court was immediate, and his presence was felt by his teammates, who welcomed him back with open arms. Though his return was emotional, it was also a reminder that no player in the history of the game had the ability to change a team's fortunes so quickly. Jordan's re-entry into the NBA was nothing short of extraordinary. The 1995 season was about him finding his rhythm again, not just in terms of physical performance but also in how he integrated back into the team. He wasn't the only star player on the Bulls anymore. Scottie Pippen had emerged as one of the best all-around players in the league, and the Bulls were more well-rounded than ever. The dynamic between Jordan and Pippen was central to the Bulls' success. They complemented each other perfectly. Pippen's defense and playmaking abilities were a perfect foil to Jordan's scoring and leadership. But it wasn't just about the individual pieces. It was about the collective effort, and Jordan's return sparked a renewed sense of purpose within the team. By the end of the 1995 season, the Chicago Bulls were once again primed for greatness. Jordan, having shaken off the rust, was back at his dominant best, and the team was in a position to make a run at another championship. But as they entered the 1995 playoffs, there was a sense that they were still finding their way. The Bulls faced the Charlotte Hornets in the first round of the playoffs, and although Jordan's return gave the team a boost, they were still trying to find their rhythm. The Bulls advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they were tested by the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic, led by the dominant center Shaquille O'Neal and a talented young player in Penny Hardaway, were a tough opponent. Despite Jordan's return, the Bulls were caught off guard by the Magic's athleticism and physicality. The Magic pushed the Bulls to the brink, defeating them in 4 games and sending them home earlier than expected. For Jordan, the loss was a painful reminder that even the greatest players needed time to readjust after a long break. The defeat marked a temporary setback, but it also reignited Jordan's drive. He knew that the team had the talent to win, but they needed to be more cohesive, more focused, and more determined than ever before. Jordan's defeat at the hands of the Magic did not break his spirit, it strengthened it. He understood that championship teams were built not just on talent, but on resilience, on the ability to fight through adversity. The loss in 1995 set the stage for a return to dominance. The next year would see the Chicago Bulls rise to heights they had never before reached. But before that could happen, Michael Jordan had to reconnect with his hunger for victory, rediscover the passion that had led him to greatness, and prove that he was, once again, the best player in the world. The 1995-96 season marked the beginning of the Chicago Bulls' dominance in the NBA, with Michael Jordan firmly at the helm. Despite the setback in the 1995 playoffs, where the Bulls were ousted by the Orlando Magic, the team knew that their foundation was solid. Jordan had returned from his brief retirement, and though his early return was rocky, it was clear that he was regaining his form. The 1995-96 season would be different, though. The offseason had brought in key pieces, and with Jordan in top form, the team was poised to make a run that would redefine the franchise and the league itself. As the season began, the Bulls immediately clicked. Jordan had spent the summer refining his game, and his leadership was stronger than ever. His relationship with Scottie Pippen was at its peak. Pippen, one of the best all-around players in the NBA, was an ideal complement to Jordan, handling much of the defensive responsibilities while still contributing offensively. The duo's dynamic was further strengthened by the addition of key veterans like Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, and Tony Kukoc, who added depth and versatility to the team. But it wasn't just the roster that made the difference, it was the change in mindset. The Bulls were no longer the team that could rely solely on individual brilliance. They were now a team built on chemistry, defense, and unselfish play. As the season progressed, the Bulls became an unstoppable force. They finished with a remarkable 72-10 record, setting an NBA record for the most wins in a single season, a feat that would stand for over 2 decades. Jordan played a pivotal role in this historic season, averaging over 30 points per game and playing with the same intensity that had made him a legend. But even as he dominated, Jordan recognized that this season was about more than just his scoring. It was about the team. The Bulls were a well-oiled machine, and every player contributed in meaningful ways. The depth of the team allowed Jordan to take less of a load offensively at times, and his teammates rose to the occasion when needed. It was a team-first mentality that Jordan had embraced, and it was paying off. One of the most significant factors in the Bulls' success was their defense. Coach Phil Jackson, who had taken over the team in 1989, had instilled a defensive mentality into the team. The Bulls became one of the most stifling defensive units in the league, led by the defensive prowess of Jordan and Pippen. The two stars formed one of the most formidable defensive duos in NBA history, and their ability to disrupt opposing offenses was a major part of the team's success. The Bulls were not only scoring points at an incredible rate, but they were also suffocating teams defensively, creating turnovers and fast break opportunities that led to easy baskets. But it wasn't just defense and teamwork that made the 1995-96 Bulls special, it was the chemistry that permeated throughout the locker room. The team had a confidence that came from knowing they had the best player in the world, but it also had the humility to understand that success wasn't just about one player. Jordan had embraced the idea of making his teammates better. While his individual brilliance remained a key factor in the team's success, Jordan had evolved as a leader. He was now willing to pass the ball when necessary, set up his teammates, and trust them in critical moments. This unselfishness was a major factor in the team's rise to the top. Jordan was still the best player on the court, but he was no longer the only player the Bulls relied on. As the playoffs began, the Bulls were on a mission. They knew they had a chance to do something special, and they were determined not to let the opportunity slip away. In the first round of the playoffs, they faced the Miami Heat, a team that had a solid roster but lacked the experience to challenge the defending champions. The Bulls made quick work of the Heat, sweeping them 3-0 in the series. Jordan's dominance was apparent as he averaged 31.5 points per game, leading the team with his scoring and defense. Next up was the New York Knicks, a team that had given the Bulls trouble in previous seasons. The Knicks, led by Patrick Ewing, were a tough, physical team with a defense that could slow down even the most potent offenses. But the Bulls were no longer the same team they had been. They were more confident, more cohesive, and more focused. The series was hard-fought, with the Knicks trying to impose their physicality on the Bulls, but Jordan's leadership and ability to take over games when needed proved to be the difference. The Bulls advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, winning the series 4-1. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls faced the Orlando Magic, the team that had knocked them out of the playoffs the previous season. The Magic, led by Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway, were a rising force in the league, and they were hungry for revenge after their previous success over the Bulls. But Jordan's return to form, combined with the Bulls' improved team play, made them nearly unstoppable. The Bulls were on a mission, and they showed it by sweeping the Magic 4-0 in the series. Jordan's play was extraordinary, and his leadership shone through as he dominated on both ends of the floor. With their dominant performance in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls were headed back to the NBA Finals. Their opponent would be the Seattle Supersonics, a talented team led by Gary Payton, Shawn Kemp, and Detlef Schrempf. The Supersonics had a strong defense and a potent offense, but they were no match for the Bulls. Jordan, Pippen, and the rest of the Bulls were simply too good. The series would go 6 games, but the Bulls would emerge victorious, winning their 4th championship in 6 years. Jordan was named Finals MVP once again, and the 1995-96 Chicago Bulls were crowned NBA champions. The team's 72-10 regular season record, combined with their dominant playoff performance, solidified their place as one of the greatest teams in NBA history. Jordan's return to the top of the basketball world was complete. His leadership, both on and off the court, had been the driving force behind the Bulls' success. And while he had already won 3 championships before his first retirement, this one felt different. It felt like the beginning of a new era of dominance, and it confirmed that Michael Jordan was the greatest player to ever play the game. The 1995-96 season was a triumph not only for Jordan but for the entire Bulls organization. It was a season that proved that the team was built to last, and that Jordan's leadership was key to their success. The dominance of the Bulls during that year would become the standard for future generations. Jordan had not only returned from retirement, but he had led his team to heights that few ever thought possible. The legacy of the 1995-96 Chicago Bulls would live on as one of the most dominant in the history of the sport, and Michael Jordan's place at the top of the basketball world was more secure than ever. The road to this championship had been filled with trials, but it was clear that Jordan's fire, determination, and unrelenting pursuit of greatness were as strong as ever. The 1996-97 NBA season was one of those rare moments in basketball history when everything fell into place for a team. After their dominant championship run the previous year, the Chicago Bulls had a target on their backs. The pressure to repeat was immense. The basketball world was now fully aware of the Bulls' strength, especially with Michael Jordan at the helm. Yet despite the weight of the expectation, the team carried themselves with the same focus that had propelled them to the top in the first place. Jordan, ever the competitor, approached the 1996-97 season with the same intensity he had every season prior. He had already cemented his legacy as one of the greatest players in NBA history, but for him, that wasn't enough. His hunger for success remained unwavering. The 1997 season was a test not just of his individual brilliance but of his ability to continue leading a team that had already achieved greatness. There were no more underdog stories, no more proving himself, Now, it was about maintaining dominance and leading the Bulls to another championship. The 1996-97 Bulls were a team built on continuity and depth. The core trio of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Ron Harper remained intact, with Jordan and Pippen continuing to form one of the most dynamic duos the NBA had ever seen. Jordan's ability to score at will, paired with Pippen's all-around game and defensive prowess, was a combination no team could match. Adding to this depth was Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr, and Luke Longley. The Bulls were no longer just about Jordan, they were a well-rounded, defensively solid team that could beat you in multiple ways. The experience and cohesion of the group made them the team to beat, and they knew it. While Jordan was still the focal point of the offense, the coaching staff had done an excellent job ensuring the team wasn't reliant solely on him. The fluidity of their offense allowed for multiple players to step up and contribute when needed. Jordan didn't have to score 40 points a game anymore, although, at times, he still did. He had learned how to delegate the offense to Pippen and others, trusting his teammates to deliver when called upon. This shift in dynamics was crucial for the Bulls, as it allowed Jordan to preserve his energy for the bigger moments while still maintaining his leadership role. The season started with the usual sense of urgency, as the Bulls wanted to prove that their success wasn't just a one-time achievement. Jordan, despite his success in the previous seasons, was still determined to make this team his. He often drove his teammates hard in practice, demanding nothing less than perfection. His relentless work ethic was contagious, and it quickly became clear that this Bulls team was prepared to defend their title with every ounce of energy they had. By the time the playoffs arrived, the Bulls had established themselves as one of the top teams in the league. They had a 69-13 regular season record, and even though the Eastern Conference had become more competitive, no one seemed able to match the Bulls' level of play. They entered the playoffs as the clear favorites to win it all again, but even with the confidence that comes with being defending champions, there was a lingering uncertainty. Could they repeat? Could they handle the pressure? In the first round, the Bulls faced the Washington Bullets. The matchup was over almost as soon as it began. The Bulls swept the Bullets in 3 games, and Jordan's performance was dominant. His ability to close games, take control, and deliver in clutch moments was apparent in every contest. The first round was a mere formality for the defending champions. The next test came in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Atlanta Hawks. While the Hawks were a solid team, led by the sharp shooting guard Mookie Blaylock, they didn't have the star power to contend with the Bulls. In each game, the Bulls' defense overwhelmed the Hawks. Jordan, Pippen, and the rest of the team swarmed Atlanta's offense, stifling their scoring and causing turnovers. The Bulls won the series 4-1, with Jordan continuing to show that, when it mattered, he was still the best player on the floor. But the real challenge came in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Bulls would meet the Miami Heat, a team led by Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway. The Heat were no pushovers, and they had the physicality and defensive presence to challenge the Bulls. For the first time in the playoffs, Chicago was truly tested. The Heat were aggressive and fought tooth and nail, but Jordan's leadership and the team's superior depth ultimately proved too much. Despite a tough series, the Bulls closed out the Heat in 5 games. This victory set up the ultimate challenge, the NBA Finals. For the second consecutive year, the Bulls were facing the Utah Jazz, led by 2-time MVP Karl Malone and point guard John Stockton. The Jazz had been knocking on the door for years, and they were eager to claim their first championship. The matchup was intriguing, as it pit one of the league's most successful dynasties against a team that had been on the rise. The Jazz had a strong defensive foundation and a potent offense, but the Bulls had the experience, the star power, and the championship pedigree. It was a showdown that would determine if the Bulls were truly a dynasty or just a flash in the pan. The 1997 NBA Finals proved to be one of the most competitive in recent memory. The Jazz came out strong in Game 1, stealing home court advantage with a win in Chicago. But as the series progressed, the Bulls began to find their rhythm, with Jordan leading the charge. His scoring was as efficient as ever, and his leadership in clutch moments was exactly what the Bulls needed to regain control of the series. Game 5 of the finals became a pivotal moment in Jordan's career. Despite battling flu-like symptoms, Jordan put on one of the most iconic performances of his career in a game that would go down in history as the flu game. Jordan played through severe dehydration and exhaustion, scoring 38 points and leading the Bulls to a victory over the Jazz. It was an embodiment of everything Jordan stood for: resilience, determination, and an unwavering commitment to winning. His ability to perform in one of the most difficult moments of his career only reinforced his legacy as the greatest to ever play the game. The Bulls went on to win the series in 6 games, securing their 5th NBA title in 7 years. Jordan was named Finals MVP once again, further cementing his status as the best player in the world. The victory marked the continuation of the Bulls dynasty, and Jordan had once again proven that he was the leader capable of carrying a team to the highest level. As the 1997-98 season loomed on the horizon, the pressure to continue their success only increased. The Bulls were now the standard by which all teams were measured. But there was also a sense that the end of an era was approaching. Jordan was nearing the end of his playing career, and the Bulls dynasty was showing signs of fatigue. The following season would be filled with uncertainty and challenges, but for now, the team was still at the top of the basketball world. Jordan had shown once again that he was the player to beat, and no one could deny his place in history. As the 1997-98 season began, the Chicago Bulls were at a crossroads. The team was fresh off their 5th NBA championship in 7 years, and the pressure to repeat was palpable. Michael Jordan, now in his 13th season, was still playing at an elite level, but the signs of aging were becoming more evident. His body, which had once been indestructible, was starting to show the wear and tear of an extended career at the highest level. Despite these challenges, Jordan remained the centerpiece of the Bulls' success. His leadership, skill, and fierce competitiveness continued to drive the team, but the clock was ticking. This would be his final season with the Bulls, and the pressure to go out on top loomed large. The 1997-98 season would go down in history as the final chapter in the Bulls dynasty, and much of the drama surrounding the year was driven by uncertainty. It was well known that the relationship between head coach Phil Jackson and the Bulls management was deteriorating. Jackson's future with the team was unclear, and it became apparent that this would be his final season coaching the Bulls. The front office had given him a 1-year contract, and it was unclear what the future held. Despite the uncertainty, Jackson's leadership and ability to manage the egos of his players remained one of the key factors in the Bulls' success. The team was ready for one last run, but it was clear that this season was different. There was a sense of finality, not just because of Jackson's contract situation, but because of the age of the team. Jordan, Pippen, and the rest of the squad knew that this was their last chance to win another title together. The season started off with a familiar sense of urgency. Jordan, despite his age, showed no signs of slowing down. His scoring remained efficient, and his defense was as formidable as ever. Pippen, now an established all-star, was the perfect complement to Jordan's offensive prowess. However, the real key to the Bulls' success was their depth. Players like Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc, and Ron Harper provided the necessary support, while players like Luke Longley and Bill Wennington gave the team additional size and experience. The chemistry between these players was undeniable, and the familiarity of the core group made them a dangerous opponent for anyone in the league. Throughout the regular season, the Bulls continued to dominate the competition, finishing with a 62-20 record, good for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. They had been through so much together, and it seemed like nothing could break their rhythm. But even as they entered the playoffs, there was an undeniable feeling that this would be the last time they could attempt to achieve the ultimate goal as a unit. The playoffs would provide an opportunity to prove once again that, even in the face of adversity, the Bulls were still the best team in basketball. In the first round of the playoffs, the Bulls faced the defending Eastern Conference champion, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland had a strong team, led by the talented Shawn Kemp and the emerging star, the late-game sniper, Craig Ehlo. However, the Bulls were simply too good. Jordan, Pippen, and the rest of the team swept the Cavaliers in 4 games, moving on to the next round with ease. Jordan's performances throughout the series were as clinical as ever, and it became clear that the Bulls had not lost a step. The second round saw the Bulls face off against the Charlotte Hornets, another formidable opponent. The Hornets were a younger, more athletic team, but the Bulls had the experience, the leadership, and the firepower to take them down. In this series, the Bulls were tested in ways they hadn't been all season. The Hornets pushed them to the limit, forcing a 6-game series, but in the end, the Bulls' experience and leadership prevailed. Jordan's scoring, Pippen's all-around play, and the team's defensive prowess were enough to send the Hornets packing. With the Eastern Conference Finals set, the stage was now set for a showdown with the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers, led by Reggie Miller, had been one of the best teams in the East that season. They had a talented roster that included a strong frontcourt with Rick Smits and an up-and-coming player in Jalen Rose. The Pacers also had the defensive ability to slow down Jordan, and their physicality would challenge the Bulls. For the first time in the playoffs, the Bulls found themselves in a real battle. Jordan, however, was unrelenting, and despite some struggles early in the series, he came through when it mattered most. Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals was a testament to Jordan's leadership. The Bulls and Pacers had fought tooth and nail throughout the series, and now it all came down to one game. Jordan delivered with 28 points in Game 7, showing why he was still the best player on the floor. The Bulls won 88-83, advancing to the NBA Finals for the third straight year. It was a hard-fought victory, and while Jordan's performance was key, it was the entire team's effort that pushed them through. The NBA Finals would pit the Bulls against the Utah Jazz, who had been one of the best teams in the Western Conference. The Jazz, led by Karl Malone and John Stockton, had been knocking on the door of a championship for years. They were an incredibly well-coached team and had the depth to compete with anyone. The series was set to be a classic, as it was Jordan's final shot at another championship, and the Jazz were hungry to win their first. The first 2 games of the finals were split between the two teams, with the Jazz securing a critical win in Salt Lake City. However, the Bulls were undeterred, and as the series shifted back to Chicago, Jordan and the team began to take control. Game 5 would be a defining moment. The Bulls were ahead, but the Jazz pushed them to the limit. With the game hanging in the balance, Jordan's iconic shot in the final seconds of Game 5 would go down in history. The clutch basket, which would later be called the last shot, was a testament to Jordan's unwavering ability to deliver in the most high-pressure situations. The Bulls went on to win Game 5, setting the stage for a potential clinching Game 6. In Game 6, the Bulls faced down a fierce Jazz team that wasn't ready to give up. Jordan, however, was determined to finish his career on top. He played through pain, exhaustion, and the immense pressure that came with such an important game. With the game tied and the seconds ticking away, Jordan found himself in a familiar position, needing to deliver when it mattered most. He drained a shot with 25 seconds left, putting the Bulls up by 3. The Jazz couldn't answer, and the Bulls sealed their 6th championship. Michael Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 6th time in his career, and the Chicago Bulls had done it again. It was an emotional moment for Jordan, Pippen, and the entire team. As the confetti fell in the United Center, it was clear that this was the end of an era. The Bulls had won their 6th championship in 8 years, and Michael Jordan's legacy as the greatest basketball player of all time was secure. The 1997-98 season had been the final chapter of an extraordinary journey. Jordan's leadership, determination, and incredible skill had carried the Bulls to the pinnacle of success once again. As he walked off the court for the final time, there was no doubt that Jordan had cemented his place in basketball history as one of the greatest players to ever step foot on a basketball court. The dynasty had come to a close, but Michael Jordan's legacy would live on forever. The 1998 NBA Finals were the final chapter in Michael Jordan's remarkable career with the Chicago Bulls. After 6 championships in 8 seasons, 3 retirements, and countless iconic moments, Jordan had achieved everything a player could hope for in the game. Yet, as the 1997-98 season unfolded, there was an underlying feeling that this would be the end of the road. Despite his legendary status, the weight of carrying the Bulls for so many years had begun to take its toll. The media, the fans, and even Jordan himself knew that his time with the Bulls was drawing to a close. The pressure was immense. Could Jordan, at 35 years old, lead his team to yet another title and go out on top? The Bulls entered the 1998 Finals against the Utah Jazz with the knowledge that this could be their final opportunity. The Jazz, led by Karl Malone and John Stockton, were hungry for their first NBA championship. But there was no team in NBA history more accustomed to pressure than the Chicago Bulls. With Jordan at the helm, they had faced every challenge and overcome every obstacle. The 1998 Finals would be no different. From the start, it was clear that this series would be a battle. The Utah Jazz were no slouches, and they knew they had the chance to dethrone the reigning champions. Game 1 saw the Bulls take an early lead, but the Jazz fought back fiercely. The series was tightly contested, and every game felt like a potential turning point. But Jordan was relentless. Whether it was his scoring ability, his leadership, or his uncanny ability to perform in the clutch, he made sure the Bulls stayed in the fight. The Jazz were talented, but they were up against a force that had been built for this moment. In Game 5 of the series, with the Bulls and Jazz tied at 2 games apiece, Jordan faced perhaps the most significant challenge of his career. Despite battling through a series of physical ailments and exhaustion, Jordan played through it all. His performance in Game 5, often referred to as the flu game, became one of the most iconic moments in basketball history. With the Bulls on the brink of falling behind in the series, Jordan fought through dehydration and illness to score 38 points and lead the Bulls to a crucial victory. His ability to perform at such a high level, even when physically compromised, was a testament to his strength, resilience, and will to win. It was a performance that solidified Jordan's status as the greatest to ever play the game. The Bulls, now leading 3-2 in the series, returned to Utah for Game 6. It was clear to everyone, fans, players, coaches, that this was more than just a game, it was the culmination of an era. The Chicago Bulls had already won 5 championships with Jordan at the center, and this would be his last shot at another title. The emotional weight of the game was felt by every player, but none more than Jordan. He had already conquered the NBA. Now, this was about securing his place as the undisputed greatest player of all time, one final time. But it wasn't just about him. It was about everything he had accomplished with the team, the legacy he had built with the Bulls. This moment, as much as it was his own, was shared with his teammates and coaches. Game 6 was a tight, hard-fought contest, and the Jazz pushed the Bulls to the limit. But in the final moments, it was clear who had the ball in his hands. With just 25 seconds left in a tie game, Jordan dribbled to the top of the key and began his move. As he approached, he pulled up for a jump shot, his signature move, right in front of the defending Jazz. Time seemed to stand still as the ball left his fingertips. It was the perfect shot, the perfect moment. The shot swished through the net, giving the Bulls a 3-point lead with less than 10 seconds remaining. The Jazz couldn't respond, and the Bulls held on to win 87-86, securing their 6th NBA championship. Jordan had done it again. He had carried his team to the top, finishing his Bulls career with another title. The crowd in the United Center erupted, and Jordan embraced his teammates, knowing that this victory was a culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and greatness. As he held the Finals MVP trophy for the 6th time, the magnitude of the achievement hit home. Jordan had not only secured another championship for the Bulls, but he had also proven that, even at 35, he was still the best player in the world. The 1998 Finals marked the final chapter of Jordan's career with the Chicago Bulls, and it was a fitting conclusion to a dynasty that had changed the game forever. But as much as the victory was about the team, it was also about Jordan personally. The 1998 Finals solidified his legacy as the greatest player in NBA history. No one had achieved as much, and no one had done it with the same level of skill, passion, and intensity. Jordan's ability to perform in the clutch, to take over games when it mattered most, was unparalleled. His leadership, his ability to elevate his teammates, and his willingness to sacrifice for the team had made the Bulls the most dominant franchise of the 1990s. And with his 6th championship in hand, Jordan had secured his place in the annals of basketball history. After the win, Jordan announced that he was retiring from basketball for the 2nd time. This time, it seemed like the end. He had conquered the NBA, won 6 championships, and cemented his legacy as the greatest player ever. There was no more to prove. Jordan's retirement was met with mixed emotions. For basketball fans, it was the end of an era. But for Jordan, it was the closure he needed. He had nothing left to accomplish in the game. He had led the Bulls to the pinnacle of success, and he had done it in a way that no one else had ever done before. As he walked away from the game, Jordan knew that his impact on basketball would continue for years to come. His style of play, his mentality, and his approach to competition would influence future generations of players. He had changed the way the game was played and had set the standard for greatness. His legacy would live on through the countless players who had looked up to him and tried to emulate his success. In the years that followed, Jordan would remain involved in the game, becoming part owner and president of basketball operations for the Charlotte Hornets. But his time on the court was over. The basketball world had witnessed the rise of a legend, and with his final shot in 1998, Michael Jordan had written the perfect ending to one of the greatest careers in sports history. The Chicago Bulls dynasty, led by Michael Jordan, may have ended, but his impact on the game would live forever. Michael Jordan had not only defined an era of basketball, he had defined greatness. His legacy, cemented in the history books, was a testament to his unparalleled talent, unyielding determination, and fierce will to win. And as the years passed, there was no question, Michael Jordan was, and always would be, the greatest basketball player to ever play the game.